Good morning, everyone. Fiona, Pearman and Kate Boorer. And we're digging further into psychosocial safety and what the benefits are around creating that kind of workplace environment. One of the things we know is really fundamental to this is psychological safety. And there's been a lot of studies that have really looked at what it means for organisations and performance when we have a situation, an environment where people feel psychologically safe. And I think the big one that was done about 10 years ago, Google dug into all the data. They measured everything around high performance for teams. And by a huge factor, the number one piece that made a difference was when people felt psychologically safe, when they could speak up, when they could challenge the status quo, when they didn't mind being a bit embarrassed or getting something wrong. All of those things were critical to creating that place where people felt comfortable enough to actually extend themselves. And by definition, they then created that high performance.
Yeah, I think, intuitively this feels right? We create a psychologically safe environment. We intuitively know that performance is going to be better, well-being is going to be better, all of those sorts of things. And we know that data really matters, providing evidence that actually links to tactical, practical business metrics that organisations measure and that matter to leadership teams, to boards, is a really important piece around understanding why these sorts of things are important, why prioritising this conversation around psychological safety beyond the legal requirements that we've got matters. And I think the first, again, more great data around this. Harvard, Gartner, Gallup have done some great stuff. We'll get links to some articles for you. But the first one, no surprises, is well-being, right? 74% less stress, 29% increase in life satisfaction. When you think about the stresses, right, in the workplace, relationships with colleagues, with bosses, we know, it's something like, don't quote me on this one, but certainly something like 70% of people leave organisations because of their boss. Inherently, if we are feeling like we're in a team with colleagues and a leader where I feel safe to be able to speak up, then inherently our stress levels go down, our well-being goes up, and we know that this one is critical.
Yeah, I think the opportunity here is to start to understand, well, what is driving behaviour and what are the things that are potentially getting in the way? Because we know that the risks here are quite big, but there's associated costs too. There's a lot that goes on around this. And I think one of the other ones we focus in on is retention. Retention's so important, all that acquired knowledge, all of that ability to share, to bring other people on the journey. When we have good psychologically safe environments, we'll get 27% less, reduction in turnover. And that's a hugely beneficial thing for organisations on lots of levels. I think the other piece, we're very interested in productivity. How do we enhance people's ability to turn up, to do the good work they're capable of? What do we need to put in place? One of the things we know again about this work is 50% increase in productivity when people feel they're in a psychologically safe environment. And that has a huge ramification in terms of, overall achievement for businesses and, and performance from a profit perspective.
Yeah, I think, when we talk about productivity, we talk about engagement data. Engagement data says 76% increase in psychologically safe environments, 57% increase in collaboration. All these things that organisations, and all organisations, countries are wanting to increase productivity, right? All organisations are wanting to increase collaboration. We see that constantly in conversations in executive rooms. And so when we can start to demonstrate that a focus here, prioritising psychological safety, has a ripple effect everywhere else, and naturally, right, it flows down to the bottom line. When we think about increase, in revenue, decrease in cost base, just the retention alone, 27% reduction in turnover means that our recruitment costs are down, our costs, to get team members up to a place where they are productive, that learning curve goes down. All of those sorts of things flow through profit. And I think the other really big one that is not to be underestimated is the employer brand of the organisation out in the market, in terms of willingness of people wanting to work for those organisations, wanting to go and be part of those organisations, and this pace around diversity, fee and innovation.
Yeah, I think this is where, it's so incredibly powerful. And one of the reasons Google was doing that initial study was to really understand. I mean, any company is looking for ways in which to be more innovative. We know high performing teams are naturally going to be willing to explore ideas, to take risks, to think about things differently. And so that culture in which we're encouraging and fostering the willingness to innovate, to challenge the current way of doing things, to take a few risks, is really, really powerful and far more likely to happen when we've created that environment. I think this other piece that's so important is we want to hear from diverse voices. We want to hear from people who've had different life experiences. We want people to bring all of their knowledge and intelligence into the room and to be able to share that. And what we know is that if it feels uncomfortable or difficult, or people are feeling marginalized, as though they can't speak up, that does have a really material impact in terms of what we're going to do and what we're going to choose to do. So willingness to create a situation where even if I am different to the majority of people in the room, I still feel comfortable enough to voice my opinion, to share my perspective, to offer something into the mix that's maybe a little bit different to what others are talking about.
Yeah, so lots to dig into here, right? In terms of the conversation around the legal obligation around psychosocial safety, but then the business benefits at individual performer levels, at leadership levels, and of course broader at organisation levels are huge. And so really worth starting to look at how do we look at this as an organisation? How do we bring together the business case that will make this, beyond the legal requirement, make this a really valuable investment of time, energy and resource for our organisation. Lots for us to, of course, continue into digging into with regards to this conversation around psychosocial safety, which we will continue over the month. If you enjoyed today's confidence conversation, we'd love for you to share this with someone in your network for whom you feel it might be valuable. If you want to dig into more of our videos, head over to our Facebook page. They're all over there, and our YouTube channel as well. And of course, if you'd like to find out more about working with us, please visit our website, coreconfidence.com.au.